two members of the Point Blue Conservation staff with us, Leia Giambastiani and Alycia Matz. Leia is the Senior Restoration Project Manager for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. Many of you probably know it as STRAW, which has done many projects in Marin County over the years. Leah's been with STRAW since 2007. She's worked on numerous restoration sites and diverse habitats and has been involved with native plant nurseries. She's currently focusing on Bay Edge restoration, but also has worked on riparian and other wetland projects. She's been a naturalist, a waste auditor, and an organic farm assistant in Italy. What a diverse background. She's a graduate of Cal Poly Humboldt with a major in environmental science and a minor in appropriate technology. She's also been very active with our neighboring Milo Baker chapter of CNPS, including a past president of the chapter, and has served in many other roles with the chapter as well. Alycia Matz is a restoration project manager at the Novato Baylands, which you're going to hear a lot more about. She's been with the STRAW program since 2022. Her role centers on engaging communities in hands-on restoration activities, and she's previously worked at the Baylands as an intern and later as a restoration technician. She's also on the board of the Friends of Corte Madera Creek, and she's on track to graduate with an MS in Natural Resource and Environmental Sciences from the University of Illinois UrbanaChampaign later in this year. So it's with great pleasure that I turn it over to you, Leia and Alycia, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for that introduction. I don't need to introduce myself. Our talk will be talking about Novato Baylands, how to connect people to place through native plant restoration. And both myself and Alycia Matz will be presenting to you. Here's an overview of our presentation. We're going to talk about Point Blue Conservation Sciences STRAW program. We're going to talk about Novato Baylands, a site that we work at. The restoration cycle, an overview, so understanding, and how we are engaging the community. We will give some plant highlights as well as wildlife highlights. STRAW, so as many of you know, stands for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. It is a program of Point Blue Conservation Science, but it was started in Lorette Rogers' classroom in 1992, asked by a student, what can we do to save the endangered California freshwater shrimp? It has grown enormously, and we are a program of Point Blue Conservation Science, which is an environmental nonprofit with over 50 years of dedication to the conservation of birds, other wildlife, and ecosystems, and now focused particularly on adaptation in this time of climate change. Point Blue's 160 scientists develop nature-based solutions to climate change, habitat loss, and other environmental threats to benefit wildlife and people. Our STRAW program has over 31 years of restorations completed, and we have a lot of big numbers here. So big picture, since 1992, we've done more than 800 restorations with classes and community members. We have over 60,000 put over 60,000 native plants into the ground, more than 50,000 students, miles and miles of creek bank restored, and we work in quite a large area, and we've been expanding. As you can see, we have areas in the Sierras, Plumas, Lassen County, Tehama. We're also working into the South Bay. We have a program running out of the South Bay, STRAW program in Santa Clara, San Benito, and also the East Bay, Contra Costa, Solano, Alameda, and Napa counties, and the North Bay too. Our STRAW program has a variety of services that we do. Our biggest one that we're well known for is community engagement. And we engage the community through revegetation. We also do biotechnical erosion control, where we're taking natural plant fibers and natural plant materials and using them to prevent erosion. We do invasive plant removal, and we act as a one-stop project management group where we do everything from planning and design into facilitating into implementation, maintenance, monitoring, and reporting. And we also run native plant nurseries. So our 3 native plant nurseries that we are running, Novato Baylands, which we'll talk more about today. And this one was formerly run by Christina McWhorter. We also run Casa Grande High School and San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge nurseries. This is a map to show you where these nurseries are located. So as you can see, they're all in the North Bay. The Casa Grande High School nursery is in Petaluma, located at the Casa Grande High School campus. The San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge nursery is at the headquarters of San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge, right along Highway 37. And our Novato Bayland nursery is located at Hamilton in Novato. The Hamilton nursery is right behind the neighborhood along a public trail, and we host weekly nursery volunteer days. We have classes and community groups, tours, and hands-on engagement. The Novato Baylands is a really large property. We are focused on 177 acres in the tidal marsh and managed hydrology areas, as well as some seasonal wetlands. It is a state coastal conservancy property and was a Army Corps of Engineers wetland restoration. They're still actively involved with us. This is a newer map of the Novato Baylands, and I just wanted to point out the public access so that everyone knows where they can go to take a look and experience the Novato Baylands. At Hamilton here, you can see the blue trail, the blue line, that is a public bay trail, and there is plans to connect it farther down to connect with the Las Colinas Valley Sanitary District in the future. And they have plans to do a large future habitat restoration area. So you can see this area that's in the green color, that will be a larger restoration. And another area that I just want to point out is just adjacent to the Belmarine Keys community, and there's a seasonal wetland complex there with alkali meadow. So just to review some of the habitat types that are at Hamilton, we have seasonal saline wetlands, we have a tidal marsh, we have a salt marsh to upland transition zone. So these are some of the areas that we are focused on, the native plants and restoring native plants into these areas. At Belmarine Keys, Unit 5, we have an alkali meadow, seasonal freshwater wetlands, and lowland grassland areas. At Novato Baylands, we work with a huge array of partners that allow us to do the work. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them as a big list, but we have the State Coastal Conservancy, our funder and largest partner, Army Corps of Engineers, WRA, Recon, Save the Bay, Conservation Corps of the North Bay, Environmental Science Associates, Avocet Research Associates, lots of school and community groups, and more. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alycia, who will be explaining how we do the work that we do through our restoration at Novato Baylands.
Yes, thank you, Leah. So just as was previously mentioned, STRAW is sort of a one-stop project management location. We oversee all aspects of the restoration cycle. And I'll be going into each of these in more depth, but just to briefly highlight them, that is seed collection and processing, propagation, best management practices throughout this whole process, plant installation, maintenance, and monitoring. So to speak more to seed collection and processing, Because we can't buy all the seeds for the plants that we work with, it's essential that we collect those seeds. And we do this both locally and ethically. Ethically, in that we are collecting no more than 5% of the available seed from a plant's total population. And locally, in that we are collecting from within the same watershed where our restoration project is occurring, because we want to ensure that we're working with the local genotypes that are adapted to the same environmental conditions where the restoration work is happening. And in that way, we are guaranteeing that the plants that we are growing and planting have the best chance of survival as possible. And we also will clean and store these seeds as needed to increase their longevity until we are ready to use them. As Leah mentioned, we have 3 straw-run native plant nurseries. And so another key aspect of our work is the propagation of those native plants. So within our nurseries, we will grow plants by seed or by vegetative propagation. So that is for the vegetative propagation, that's essentially taking root material, say from plants such as saltgrass or creeping wild rye, ones that might not necessarily have the highest seed germination rate. And we can split that rhizomatous material, create more plants. We will keep our plants in the shade house anywhere from about 6 months to 2 years until those plants are mature enough to install in the field. And throughout this whole process, we make sure to follow best management practices. So we train all of our staff and volunteers on the most up-to-date BMPs. We will also test our plants for plant pathogens. We just heard it earlier, namely Phytophthora. That's the main one that we want to prevent spreading throughout our restoration sites. So we'll use pear as an indicator. We clean all and sanitize all of our shoes, tools, and vehicles, so there's no cross-site contamination across workplaces. And we do all of this to the extent that we consider it commercial kitchen level sanitization. And so some of those additional means to try to reach that bar are using a 70% isopropyl alcohol spray. We follow certain practices, such as if a tool or plant container falls on the ground, we need to sanitize it before using it. We clean tools between batches of plants. And as you may have noted in that propagation photo, we keep all plants elevated at least 30 inches off of the ground on tables that can be easily cleaned as an additional measure to prevent the spread of Phytophthora or other plant pathogens. Next up is plant installation. So we primarily do this during the rainy season, just to help water those plants in. The ground's wet, easier to dig. We will install those potted plants and any harvested rhizomatous plants from along the site. And this is an all hands on deck effort that involves staff, students, volunteers, and partners. Just this past season at Novato Baylands, we installed over 4,000 plants. And as you can also see in this image here, we also use heat-treated mulch. So it's heat-treated to reduce that spread of pathogens. And the mulch is extremely helpful in that it helps with weed suppression around the plant. It provides nutrients to that new plant. And it also helps retain moisture over the summer season. And speaking of the summer season, a key part of caring for our plants is maintenance. So in order to help our young plants get established, we will routinely water these plantings about 2 to 4 times a month using recycled water. And we will also weed around our newly installed plants, removing non-native species so as to reduce competition. And moving to maintenance, we will look at our plants. Here on the next slide, please. We will monitor our plants each season as well. assessing each plant from the prior season on qualities such as, is it alive? Does it have high or low vigor? So meaning low vigor might mean it's experiencing some wilting, signs of drought or herbivory, or is it high vigor? So is there new growth? Is it flowering? We'll also note, is it below or above 3 feet tall, which may not apply to some of our native marsh species, as some are more low-growing ground cover, but it can still be a helpful indicator for some species, such as the western goldenrod, Euthamia occidentalis, in the photo here. And the monitoring also provides us an opportunity to know any potential causes of stress or mortality. And in this sense, we can use monitoring data to adaptively manage for the next year, because that data can inform our plans, the methods, and the timing based upon the results that we get. And so this ties back into that maintenance slide, because we've found that through that routine watering and weeding, all of that care throughout the summer, that can really help the survival rates we see go up. Next is community engagement. So as Leia noted, across all of our sites, but at Novato Baylands in particular, we engage the community in numerous ways. This includes through our volunteer programming, early career training, hands-on learning, and the annual Watershed Week. So the volunteer programming at Novato Baylands is a huge highlight of the work there. We offer multiple events each week, as well as occasional weekend events. And we offer activities for all experience levels and abilities. We aim to create a welcoming space for all to participate, no experience necessary. We provide people with all the guidance and training needed for each task, and making sure to connect how that work is contributing to the restoration at large. This is a consistent core group of volunteers that come week to week. I'd say about 40 people, and some of these individuals have been coming for over a decade now. So we truly would not be able to accomplish as much as we do without their support. And we had over 3,300 volunteer hours during 2023 alone. This opportunity also is great for just nurturing connections. The work at Novato Baylands provides people with the opportunity to develop a sense of community while knowing that they're also creating a positive impact in the face of climate change. It also provides people an opportunity to socialize, increase their physical, mental, emotional health, through developing a sense of belonging, connection to the earth and to other people. And there's also that reward of seeing progress over time. STRAW also provides numerous early career training opportunities, which are paid. This includes Conservation Corps North Bay. This is a nonprofit partner that we work with their mission to provide education and on-the-job training to young adults. So we really like partnering with them, and just both in our ability to support their mission as well as for them to help support our work. STRAW also has a community college conservation internship program that one of our staff members started about 4 years ago. This is an 8-week program centered on providing individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color an opportunity to gain experience in the conservation field. And we also have a STRAW apprenticeship program. And this is an entry-level field-based position that provides them an opportunity to engage in community-based restoration and education through supporting our restoration field trips, while also getting an opportunity to engage in opportunities that let them explore their own career path. And next we have hands-on learning. So this is really diving into the bread and butter of the STRAW program, in that we work with local schools to offer restoration field trips. And we aim to pair schools with restoration sites that are close to them so that they can really have a more direct connection with the site. Throughout this, we ensured to connect that experience to what students are learning in school. This is all tying back to California's next generation science standards. And we hope to empower students in the face of climate change, knowing that community-based restoration can make our watersheds more resilient. And throughout all of this, these are students doing professional level quality work that we are guiding them through, no matter the age, kindergarten through high school. It's not just an exercise, it's something that's actually, again, professional level benefiting our watersheds. And finally, I'll briefly note on Watershed Week, this is a professional development opportunity offered annually for teachers in our STRAW program. It's free, and there's a theme each year. The idea being that we provide this to help support teachers in integrating watershed science and education into their classroom. And with that, I will pass it back to Leia to highlight a few of the key species that we work with in our restoration at Novato Baylands.
Thank you, Alycia. So this image was actually drawn by Jesse Dittmore, another employee at Point Blue in our STRAW program. And I think it gives a really nice overview of some of the habitats that we have at Novato Baylands as well as around the bay. We have open bay habitat where you have some deeper water and some channels with even deeper water that transition into a shallow area with tidal action and mud flats, into the marsh vegetation. And then on that edge of that marsh vegetation where the tidal action stops, we move into what's called the transition zone. And this is transitioning from that marsh edge into an upland area. And often this area around the bay is marked by a levee, so a mound of soil to prevent the water from going up and over into our communities. Just wanted to note some of the species that are highlighted here in the upland, salt marsh to upland transition zone. We have gum plant it's on the marsh edge. We have, and I'll get into the specifics of different plants in my future slides, but giving an overview of where some of these plants are located in these habitat types. Gum plant on the edge, we have creeping wild rye, just above that, and we go to mugwort, yarrow, depending on the ecotype of yarrow can occur. I've seen it occurring in the pickleweed and some habitats, but often some higher up on the levee. And then we have our sticky monkey flower and sage, California sagebrush. So these are the species I'm going to highlight today. We work with more than just these, and I'm definitely happy to talk about some of the other ones if we have time at the end. But I'll review Salicornia pacifica, pickleweed, Disticus spicata, saltgrass, Frankenia salina, alkali heath. We have our Grindelia stricta angustifolia gum plant. We have Artemisia douglassiana, mugwort, Elymus tridicoides, creeping wild rye, Diplacus aurantiacus, sticky monkey flower, and Ambrosia xylostachya, western ragweed. And I just wanted to highlight this picture that was taken by one of our volunteers. It is showing how we have you can see coyote brush, but there are other species that are occurring in here. And this is a transition zone habitat type that the STRAW program worked to establish. And crossing the levee there on the top of the levee road is a Ridgway's rail. So that's an endangered species that lives in the marsh, and it's just fun to see it actually using the habitat that we're working to provide cover for. Pickleweed, Salicornia pacifica, marsh favorite here. It is a unique plant in that is one of the most salt-tolerant species that can grow below the high tide line. It collects the excess salts in its tips of the plant, which then turn red and fall off. So that is one way that the plant is able to adapt to living in a really salty area. Another one that we have is salt grass, Stisticus spicata. This one has sharp pointed rhizomes that allow it to penetrate hard soils, and erythema, which are tissues that allow air exchange under the water. And this is a really great restoration plant. It is a hardy plant, and it can tolerate a variety of conditions, being on the edge of the marsh and higher up. I just want to note how beautiful the flowers are. If you've ever gotten to see them, to zoom in on those pictures, they really are pretty. They're small, so you might not even notice them. But this photo here of its, I believe that it's the pollen form here that you can see. But that is just so pretty. It was taken by Sam Smith, straw program, in our straw program. Saltgrass handles the salt in that salty conditions through expelling the salt from its tissues through salt glands. And as you can see, this is a nice zoomed in image of how the salt is being excreted there. It also propagates both vegetatively and through seed. And so it's a great plant because it has a variety of ways to be successful. Next one I will cover is called Alkali Heath, Frankenia salina. It is a beautiful small ground cover that has nice dense vegetation, no more than 3 to 6 inches high, but it grows on just above the edge of that tidal zone, has these pretty lavender flowers, and it also has the ability to handle the salt through excreting it. Because it lives in those very salty environments. And next we'll talk about coastal gum plant, Grindelia stricta angustifolia. It is native to dunes, marshes, and bluffs along the coast, both in the bay side as well as the coastal Pacific Ocean side. It can tolerate wind and salt spray, and each flower produces a gummy white resin which protects the blooming flower from predators. Also wanted to note that it is identified as a great habitat plant for the Ridgway rail, and so often planted to support that endangered species. Next up, I have mugwort, Artemisia douglassiana. This one can grow beyond just the salt marsh, but I just wanted to note that it is a successful plant in that transition zone area. It provides nesting material for native bees, and it is frequently used by Native American tribes in the West to relieve joint pain, headaches, and rashes. And also has a fun scent if you ever rub the leaves. Creeping wild rye is an amazingly successful rhizomatous grass. It provides food and habitat for butterflies and moss. It provides shelter for wildlife, including waterfowl, shorebirds, reptiles, rodents, and other small mammals. It has, because it is another rhizomatous spreading grass, so also has the ability to spread through root fragments that get broken off or seed. And it is found in both riparian, I've seen both riparian wetland areas as well as along the edges of the salt marsh. And it is a nice competition plant that can tolerate a variety of conditions, and a tough person in some of these, tough plant in some of these conditions that we have. Sticky monkey flower. This one is a common plant and also grows in different habitat types. It has a resin, a stickiness on the leaves that is a protective adaptation. It is a plant that hosts for the larval host plant for the variable checker spot butterfly. And I think that's what I have for this one. That's the checker spot pictured there. And western ragweed, favorite for probably those who have heard of it. Maybe you get allergies from it, but it doesn't have an amazingly beautiful flower, but it is a tough plant, and it has rhizomatous roots again, as well as seeds. So it has a variety of ways of being successful in propagating itself. It flowers from July to November, and so provides a resource for pollinators that wouldn't be available in those later months. So it's nice to have that diversity in our pollination that are providing. And I'm going to hand it over to Alycia, who's going to tell us about some of the wildlife that we see out there.
Yes, thank you, Leah. We wanted to highlight some of the wildlife out here as well, just to connect back all of that native plant restoration we're doing, and just take a look at what are some of the wildlife that we are benefiting, not to mention that we're also benefiting people. So as is noted here, there's over 200 species of birds in our wetlands, and I know at least 100 have been noted at the Novato Baylands. And while we can't highlight all of the species that are out there on the next slide, I've noted just a few of the species that are out there that we're going to look at a bit more in depth. To include the salt marsh harvest mouse, western snowy plover, Ridgway's rail, black-necked stilt, American avocet, the salt marsh common yellowthroat, other migratory birds, butterflies and moths, native bees and other pollinators, lots of other wildlife. We would be here all night. All right. So the salt marsh harvest mouse, our beloved salty, is a globally endangered, in part because it is endemic to the salt marsh of the San Francisco Bay Area. Endemic meaning it's the only place in which this species is found. It's highly dependent on native marsh plants, such as pickleweed, for both shelter and food, but it also eats saltgrass and insects too, and it also makes use of grassland habitat, such as the Elymus triticioides. A fun fact is the northern subspecies can actually drink saltwater. Freshwater is preferred, but it does have that adaptation. And it is at particularly high risk of extinction due to sea level rise. And so this is definitely a species that we are working to support through our restoration work by providing high tide refugia through our native plant installation. And this isn't just a point blue or straw goal. It's a goal that is identified across the whole San Francisco Bay. The western snowy plover is also an important species to highlight here, because while most people may think of snowy plovers in association with sandy beach habitats along the Pacific coast, it actually is found here at Novato Baylands as well. And it is providing quality habitat for them at that. Which we are happy to provide, given that it is a threatened subspecies here. And there's several nesting pairs that have been doing well over the past several years. And a fun fact about it is that the eggs and chicks survive solely by natural camouflage. And so another habitat enhancement measure that we started implementing this year with one of our avian biologists is spreading crushed oyster shell hash, as you can see in the lower left photo here. And that oyster shell hash is providing perfect camouflage for that egg in the center of the photo. The Ridgway's rail is another endangered species, as Leah noted, that we are working to establish more habitat for. This is an endangered rail native to tidal marshes of coastal California and northwestern Mexico, and it's quite elusive. It spends most of its time in dense marsh vegetation, especially pickleweed. But while it is elusive, we have had other point blue biologists on surveys note that the Ridgway's rail is indeed present along the outboard levee of the Novato Baylands. And similar to the salt marsh harvest mouse, the fun fact of that it also has an adaptation of special glands that allow them to drink salt water. Two shorebirds to highlight are the black-necked stilt and American avocet. These are breeding shorebird residents of the Novato Baylands. They are common year-round, though most abundant in numbers during the winter season. and they survive almost exclusively in tidal marshes, relying on healthy wetlands for their habitat. So just once more speaking to the important work that we and all of our partners and volunteers are doing in providing quality habitat for these shorebirds. One songbird of note is the salt marsh common yellowthroat. This is a subspecies endemic to the tidal wetlands of the Bay Area that spends its whole life in the marsh. And it depends on transition zone plants, such as gum plant for its habitat and for nesting. And it's vulnerable, having declined about 80% in the 20th century. So yet again, another bird that we are aiming to establish more habitat for. And because there's simply not enough time to highlight every single bird, here's another just catch-all slide to note that we have seen as many as 100,000 birds counted through annual bird surveys that volunteers conduct at the Novato Baylands that are using the site annually, be it for resting, nesting, or as a wintering grounds. This includes tens of thousands of peeps, which includes western and least sandpipers, as well as dunlins, as you can see in this cloud of birds captured by one of our bird monitors, David Sexton. We also have many large shorebirds, such as godwit seen here, thousands of ducks and geese, such as this American widgeon, as well as many songbirds, including 5 species of swallows, such as the violet green swallow that breed here. There's numerous butterflies and moths that have been cited at the Novato Baylands, at least 50 species, as found through looking at iNaturalist observation data. This includes, just kind of going clockwise, the salt marsh moth, which uses many of the upland and transition zone species here, including California mugwort, salt marsh baccharis, coyote brush. There's also the western pygmy blue, which uses the succulent western sea purslane or Sesuvium verrucosum as a host plant. There's also the variable checker spot, as Leia noted, closely associated with sticky monkey flower. And one final one of note is the ornate tiger moth, which also uses many of the plant species here as a host plant. And finally, noting that many native bees and other native pollinators have also been found here, making use of the plants that we've installed. This includes the yellow-faced and the black-tailed bumblebees, other native bees, including sweat bees and carpenter bees, wasps, flies, and mosquitoes. I know you might groan, but they're important as pollinators too. The Anna's hummingbird, all making use of the plants on the site, such as California rose, western goldenrod. And I wanted to provide this, I know, very broad scope overview. So just to acknowledge the great diversity of wildlife on the site, but this is not necessarily an area of our expertise. So this is a little plug if you know someone or happen to do you know, surveys of insects or butterflies yourself and would be interested, then please get in touch. And one more broad scope overview slide of wildlife here that you can come see at the Novato Baylands. It includes black-tailed jackrabbits, coyotes, snakes, lizards, frogs, northern river otters, and bats. So with that, please do consider joining us for a tour on May 21st. This will be led by a Straw Point Blue staff, as well as the CNPS board member, Stacey, who's also been a volunteer at Novato Baylands. Will guide you through our native plant nursery. We will hike along the tidal marsh ecosystem. We'll see some of our active restoration sites, and you'll get a chance to see some of this amazing plant and wildlife that we've highlighted. Please contact us at any time at Novato Baylands at pointblue.org. And also feel free to check out pointblue.org/Novato Baylands for more information. And thank you so much for your time. want to acknowledge here, again, our funders, and thanks to the Coastal Conservancy for supporting our work. And a quick shout out to two staff members, Alejandro Rosales and Matt Keller, who also helped us with this presentation. So thanks again, and I think we can take questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Alycia and Leia. It's so important to be reminded of all the animal and insect biodiversity which plants support, and how the basis really of all life is plants. Without the plants, we wouldn't be here, nor would much of anything else be. So thank you. Questions? I'm not seeing any. Oh, Clint, you can unmute.
Thank you for such a good presentation. It was very, very enjoyable. And as I look out on your slide there, I see some bare ground, which is critical for a lot of those invertebrates. And I was able to catch a unusual tiger beetle at the Novato Baylands. So it's critical that those bare areas get left for tiger beetles and pollinators, because they need that bare ground to survive. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you again.
Thank you, Clint. And I agree. And other things beyond the insects also use it. In fact, I think that image of the snowy plovers with that oyster shell, they also will find bare ground spots. They don't necessarily want to be in the vegetation. They like those, they camouflage with those lighter colored soils there.
Well, exactly. Yeah. The trouble is, unfortunately, oyster shell doesn't help the invertebrates, or some of them.
Oh, sure. And those are just the oyster shell are just in small areas. So they're like less than a bucketful put out at a time. So they're spread out, and there's still plenty of bare ground in between them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Leah, it might help with questioning to stop sharing so we can see.
Oh, sure. I can do that.
Right. Laura Lovett asks, how densely do you plant and how do you get water to them?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say it depends on the species, but I would say between 1.5 to 3 feet on center. If it was a larger shrub, I would do it larger. And speaking specifically from some of those species that are in that transition zone or in the meadow habitat, like an alkaline meadow or on the wetland edge. And I find that if you can have nice density, you're gonna have better success because you can manage the weeds in between them easier. And that allows them, if you can manage those weeds, that allows those plants to get established and then spread. If you're unable to manage the weeds, they have a hard time. Some of the plants have a really hard time out competing the weeds over time, and they are never quite as successful. So I find I prefer for management and long-term success, a dense planting. Natasha, I see your question. I can take that. So alkaline meadow is referring to the pH of the soil, and tends to be more of and Alycia, feel free to jump in, or someone else can jump in, but tends to be more of a saline type environment. And so it has slightly different plants than, say, like a normal grassland meadow.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more about like the particulars of the Bayland site, in that because all of the Novato Baylands used to historically be tidal marsh, and it was all, as the story goes, it was diked and drained for agriculture around the 1850s. And so this alkali meadow at the site, it is on the inland side of a newly constructed levee, wherein eventually part of the site will be returned to tidal marsh. But due to that subsidence, the soil is still quite saline. And so while there's not, you know, tidal influence due to the salinity in the soil, we see like a natural occurrence of plants that you would think to associate in a tidal marsh ecosystem, such as alkali heath or saltgrass, coming up via natural recruitment, if that helps. And I also note there's a second part to Laura's question, which I can also answer. At the Novato Baylands, in terms of how do we water our plants, we have a 525-gallon water trailer that we hook up to our vehicles, and we're able to, again, access recycled water through a North Marin Water District permit. There's 2 hoses that extend out, I want to say 100 feet. I don't know the exact length, but it does provide pretty good reach for all of our plants, and it's engine powered, so the watering goes fast. And so it can be a pretty site-specific decision as to how we water our plants. There are other sites, for example, that set up a drip irrigation system.
Now, I'm assuming that most of your restoration site is very well drained, as it drains quickly. And I'm just curious, assuming that's correct, how long do you water? And you mentioned, I think, what, twice a month? With that kind of well-drained soil, I would think things would really dry out.
Yeah, I think it depends on how well established the plants are before the summer drought occurs. So there are seasons where it's not raining even during planting season, like when you typically are planting, right? You're like starting in October, November, even December, it can be dry sometimes. So we do supplement with water even during those times. Because if you go to all that effort to grow the plant and then you put it in the ground and then it's dry, we'll not make it. So it kind of defeats that purpose. So we actually will water anytime to prevent stress on that plant. Once a plant goes into that stress, that drought stress, it's not going to be growing. So it's going to go into survival mode. It might lose some of its leaves. The leaves might be wilting. So we really try and prevent that, because our goal is to not just keep the plant alive, but long-term to have it grow and expand. So for that first year, it's rather intensive watering, sometimes once per week. And our soils are dredged bay mud, so they're not naturally occurring sedimentary soils. They're different soils than would normally occur, because they were at Hamilton particularly was removed from like the Port of Oakland dredge material and then transported via barge and then pumped onto the site to bring that ground level back up. So they unfortunately are not the natural native soils of the marsh.
Do you do soil tests? What's the nutrients like in that dredge?
Alycia, do you want to talk? I know we actually, there's certain things that that we're involved in for testing. I know that there are other groups that do monitor different aspects of the soil. So around our north seasonal wetlands, where the snowy plovers are occurring in that area, we've been looking at the salinity in the soil there. So that's what we are testing for there. And the goal for that one is to understand the salinity and how the vegetation is responding to that salinity, with the idea that some of those non-native invasive weeds will not like that saline environment. And so the goal is to keep it at a saline soil level, like a pretty saline soil.
Eva Buxton has a question. Do you find the 2 invasive limonium species in the Baylands?
Yeah. To answer that, we do monitor our site for invasive plants. So at the moment, I have not seen the invasive limoniums. We do have native limonium racemosum occurring out there and spreading. It's doing really well. But I haven't seen that. And Alycia, I'll let you pipe in if there's any new updates for that.
Yeah, just to concur, the native Limonium californicum.
Oh, sorry. Racemosum is the invasive one. Sorry, I forgot that one. And we do not have that one.
Yes.
I did remove that on a different.
All good. Apologies. No, thank you. And yeah, just to chime in, we have like a early detection rapid response protocol that we work to implement to detect if we were ever to have that either of those species occur, then the hope would be we would catch it early and prevent it from spreading more.
Are you able to raise everything that you need, grow everything that you need, or do you contract with nurseries in addition?
Alycia, do you want to take that?
Sure. I would say we either grow or harvest about at least 95% of what we ultimately end up planting on the site. Just recently for plants such as the Disticus spicata or the Elamis triticioides, we did reach out, I think, to Watershed Nursery and Larner Seeds. Just because they are so instrumental to our restoration work, given how well both of those species do in areas experiencing experiencing erosion, such as on like our berms. They're just very helpful with helping keep the soil together. And because we wanted to get more genetic diversity than what harvesting from our site alone may provide us, we reached out to a couple nurseries because neither of them have the highest seed germination rate. Though we do we did start some flats of saltgrass that are doing surprisingly well, I'll note. But I guess in that sense, those are just two examples that we did reach out to try to broaden that genetic diversity, but still ensuring that, trying to still ensure that whatever populations those plants are coming from were sourced in Marin.
Yeah, thanks, Alycia. Just to add to that, most of our, that was 99.9% of our plants are grown in our native plant nursery, which is run by our volunteers and staff. And we also have what we called our farm area, where we have propagation beds out at Belmarin Keys, kind of in the middle of a hayfield farm. And so we maintain the farm so that we can collect rhizomes and transplant them out into the field.
Okay, question about endpoint. Is there a point where, and Leia, I know you've been involved in many restorations, where in your restoration you get to a point where you need no further maintenance, or are we talking about basically tending it forever at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do tend areas, and I think it's so yes, I would say I think that as humans, our impact on the land, we should be continuing to tend and look, particularly since we've introduced so many non-native invasive plants, that if you do let something go, it can, and not identify it, it can take over. So unfortunately, we can't just, I don't think we can just let them go. But I do think there becomes a point where the native plants are well established and they're going to be doing their thing, providing habitat and providing those covers, and they'll be changing in their composition over time. As those habitats become well established, the species composition might change to a slightly more mature habitat in a later succession of successional stage of plants. So I think that they do evolve, but I do think it's good for people to be on the lookout, particularly for invasive plants and tending our natives.
Is there any place where one can go and see the full range of restorations that straw has done over the years?
Oh my goodness. I believe Lorette Rogers is on the phone too. So I will, our founder is also on this Zoom call, but I would just note that that would be interesting question. We have done, riparian all the way out to the coast of and into Mollusk Bay, then back into in the Sierra. So it would be really hard to find a spot. We've done Sierra Meadow restorations, the straw program. So it'd be really hard to find a location that could cross all those different
just
habitats.
say in Marin County. I know you've done
Oh,
a number in Marin County, and it would be very interesting to have a website that showed what it looked like before you restored it, right after restoration, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
oh, yes.
Just what what has been accomplished? I know that inlet at the bottom of Tomales Bay, that was one of your earlier ones, as I recall. It's still beautiful. I don't know what monitoring shows the vegetation looks like today, but it's certainly a lovely spot, and it would be very interesting to know how those spots have evolved over the years.
Lorette, do you want to add anything? I just also just want to be so honored. Lorette Rogers she's our founder, the teacher that started our program, and it's been so successful. So happy to have you here with us, Lorette.
Yeah, I'm so excited to learn about all the Novato Baylands plants and animals. Yeah, I'd love to take you in my car and take you out, especially going out the Bodega Highway is a good place to see some of the first ranches where we did restoration work. And then, of course, we have some before and after pictures I can send you. But Leah's right. I mean, we've done different kinds of work in different areas, thanks to Fish and Wildlife. We started on wetlands restoration. In the beginning, it was just riparian restoration and all on ranches. And actually, it was the ranchers were the ones who pushed our project to scale, where we ended up doing, instead of 1 or 2 restorations a year with 1 or 2 classes, 22, 29 to today, where we have 75 restorations a year with students in the South Bay, North Bay, East Bay, the Sierras. And last year we actually had 180 days of restoration, counting all the ones with staff. So it's grown considerably from a team of about three adults facilitating this with many classes to what we have now is 35 people on our team. But that's probably enough numbers for you. But to answer your question, I mean, wow, I guess I can't take you all in my car at the same time, but I'm always looking for people to take in my car, drive out the Bodega Highway, drive around Marin, and see some sites and get an idea for some of the work we've done in the past. I think I'm going to leave it there.
It just seems to me that some student could get a master's or doctorate dissertation out of looking at all of your restoration projects and analyzing it, because what you've done is very hopeful. That is, it shows that it's possible to do this kind of thing, and too often people just throw up their hands and say the invasive plants are going to take over and there's nothing we can do about it, and get used to it. And I think it's really important to highlight the successes such as straw has had over the years, and you have a lot of them, and I think that's important to highlight. And I think that the better, the more we can put science to that and say these things are sustainable. It's not just a flash in the pan. This has made a permanent difference. That's a really important message.
Thank you. Yeah, our work is also really rewarding in that we get to bring and connect community members, to the youth or students out there, and they can see the difference. And I drive around on the roads and I point out to my children, look, our straw program did this. And then you can see these trees that have grown from being sprigs or seedlings. And I take them to parks that I've worked at and show them, look, this is the work that we've done. And I think it's really amazing and rewarding to see that. I feel very lucky that I get to do this type of work, and also lucky that I get to connect people, students, teachers, community members, and we all get to share to see the earth change for a better place, to be a better place.
Well, it's wonderful work. I'm so glad you shared it with us. And are there any other questions? We have a little time. I don't. Let me. We're still working on our program for June, so stay tuned. It'll be on our website, and you will get email on that. I just wanted to highlight some events that are happening in the chapter before we close. And that is, many of you may know, this is our 50th anniversary of the chapter's 50th anniversary. And so we're going to have a dinner on August 24th. The details are yet to be all worked out, but if you would add that to your calendar and hold that date. There are also some interesting challenges that the chapter has created that I think you might find fun. There's a native plant challenge to identify so many native plants in the wild. There are 50 acts of caring on Instagram that you can use to remind yourself of how to be more sustainable in your day-to-day activities. And something that you probably won't be eligible for, but I think you would find interesting, is a student native plant photo challenge. And we hope to, at the end of it, have a gallery show of the student winners of it. And encourage you, I won't go into the details here. It'd be too detailed, but it's all on our website under, there's a 50th anniversary feature, I think, on the homepage, which will provide all the details of it. So we just encourage you to participate in those things. And again, I want to thank you, Leia and Alycia, again for such a wonderful presentation. And we hope to see you all in June.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Very honored.
Yes, thank you.